Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Moving right along. Always trying to keep it interesting for our audience out there. Thank you for being one of our patrons, continuing to like, follow, and subscribe us. We really appreciate that. That's what helps us keep going. In any case, to jump right in today, moving right along, I keep running into some really interesting, cool young people in Pakistan doing some very interesting stuff. Today we have with us Rabeel Warraich and Salman Chattha of Sarmayacar, a venture capital fund that's set up in Pakistan. And I love the statement that came out from Rabeel, and I saw it on his LinkedIn. He's a Pakistani. I like that. And with that, I'd like to introduce Rabeel and Salman. How are you guys doing today?
Doing very well. Thank you for having us.
Our pleasure. In any case, let's just jump right into the meat of the matter. So, Rabeel, let's start with you real quick. Tell us a little more about why Sarmayacar? What happened? You know, you could have been a big time partner here at any VC in the Valley. What drove you back to Pakistan?
Thanks, Faruk, for starting with the question that I've probably gotten the most practice answering since coming back to Pakistan. I think people are less, I shouldn't say interested, but certainly less enamored by anything that the fund does versus the decision of moving back. And I think everyone has their own framework. I had my own, where Pakistan and doing something and building something which could also potentially lead to my legacy was more important than being able to continue on what was an easier path to certainly maybe better economics, both short, medium, and maybe even longer term, and also an easier way of life. The challenge became I had reached a certain level where I didn't feel my competitive advantage lay in the markets that I was working, which was primarily Europe, prior to that also the Americas, but right. Also in terms of really where the opportunity lay. I think one thing that I'm often hasty to kind of like point out, my decision was not driven by my parents particularly needing me to move back to look after them, or to have really considerations which were not tied to my career. I am an individual who lets his career really decide where I need to be based, and the opportunity in Pakistan itself was so interesting. Where again, the demographics, I don't want to bore your audience with, but it's quite fascinating that you can have 220 million population, 60% plus of which is less than 30 years old and hasn't even started consuming in a consumption-oriented economy, and where some of these startups were getting the underlying traction once 3G and 4G was enabled in the country. But yet you did not have any structured venture capital going into these businesses. And it was a simple demand-supply equation which looked very off. And in addition to capital, of course, there were many other missing pieces that continue to remain because we're still very early in that stage. But any investor that is looking at risk-return trade-off and was looking for the next growth opportunity, the next outside returns opportunities, there aren't that many other alternatives around, and that's when the demand, the opportunity side really cemented in my mind that Pakistan really was at that cusp. And then in terms of figuring out my own personal situation, family, or preference for a certain way of life, which you get accustomed to in the West. Those were, again, my own personal considerations, which I just had to weigh up versus the opportunity. And lo and behold, we made the decision to come back. And thankfully, again, touch wood, I do this 11 times out of 10. So far so good.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. And it's very inspiring and encouraging for us to know that people like yourself are going back and leading the charge to try to improve that situation. But with that, down to brass tacks. And I know Salman is your investment guru. So Salman, let's get into the meat of what's going on in the Pakistani VC space. Can you talk a little bit about who's there? Is there competition? What's going on so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined Sarmayacar pretty much in its beginnings in the early phase of 2019, and the fund was launched in 2018. Prior to this, was based in Canada, so knew little about the Pakistan ecosystem, specifically the venture space, which I thought was just emerging and was definitely an interesting opportunity. Obviously, a lot more familiar with the space, given that I've been a part of it for the last year and a half, and we see increasingly more interest and eyes towards the VC space in Pakistan, with not just local capital being attracted towards it, but also foreign capital and for foreign personnel thinking about how to potentially get exposure to this market and to the Pakistan opportunity. So what we see at large over the last year and a half is increasingly more VC firms structuring for the Pakistan-specific opportunity. Some of the larger players that seemingly have emerged over the last little bit are Fatma Gobi Group, which of course brings the pedigree of Gobi, which is a global VC firm and has done tremendously well with billions of dollars of assets under management through China and other Southeast Asian markets, comes to Pakistan for the first time. In addition, we're seeing accelerators such as I2I to begin to develop their VC functions. And we're also seeing increasingly more appetite with the likes of Atif Avan, who've previously been in senior positions at LinkedIn, to test out Pakistani opportunities. So increasingly we're seeing interest from the right pockets and the right people for us to believe that this opportunity is real. And we're not just the crazy ones thinking that there is something at play. And we continue to believe that as the ecosystem matures and we're seeing some of the underlying companies gain traction, such as Airlift securing the material Series A raise at the end of last year. And inshallah, one of our portfolio companies, Baikia, will soon be announcing its Series B transaction. We do think the underlying opportunity of these companies is coming to fruition, and it will further accelerate momentum in the VC space.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, this has been great. It's, get a little better understanding directly from people who are involved in that ecosystem. And we're coming up towards the end of our time. I had a couple of quick questions to flush through with you. So the next question is, so where are you guys sitting in that stack? What's a quantum for a VC fund of your size? Less than 10 million, greater than 10 million?
Yeah, we're already north of the 10 million mark, and we continue to admit some select new investors. Our focus now has become a little bit more institutional LPs, again, given their tendency to also back multiple funds, etc., because the plan is to be here for good and for a long time. We are investing out of our current fund, which is more than I'd say a little over half invested already, and from that we write checks anywhere as small as $100,000 all the way up to $2 million per check.
Got it.
But the idea is that we like to actually maintain our stake for at least one subsequent round. And in the case of early stage seed situations, we're likely to do that for two subsequent rounds. So we keep significant reserves even when we write the first check. And in no situation so far have we not followed our original investment in case the company is performing. So that's how we look at our portfolio construction in terms of the kind of checks that we're deploying.
Awesome. Good to understand. And for our audience out there, I know some of you folks aren't seasoned venture capital folks, or you're learning more about what's going on. And what Rabeel is talking about is basically what type of partners you bring in. These institutional partners that he referred to are bigger banks, insurance companies, pension funds, so on. So very promising that if we're starting to see those types of institutions take some interest in Pakistan. And with that, my last question for you guys, what's the ask of the diaspora? Anything more we can do from our side?
Yeah,
I think that's,
absolutely. I think
Salman, go ahead.
yeah, I think absolutely. We've both of us have been have lived abroad, have worked abroad, and have always, I guess, been intrigued by the Pakistani opportunity. For the last 2.5 years, Rabeel has now been in Pakistan. For the last year and a half, I've now been in Pakistan. And Alhamdulillah, I think we've been both excited about the opportunity and are increasingly more cognizant that there's more work to be done in order to extrapolate what is truly a unique opportunity in Pakistan as it's emerging. And really from our side, the ask from the diaspora is, if anyone is interested in any capacity, be it potentially from the aspect of investing in the ecosystem, be it through us, or even if it's outside of Sarmayacar itself, would be happy to facilitate that. We do think more capital inflows into the Pakistan ecosystem, more eyes and ears from capable handlers abroad would be a positive for the ecosystem as well. In addition to it, I think if we can play a role towards facilitating potentially diaspora Pakistanis that want to launch their own companies from the US, from Europe, or from anywhere else, we would love to play a role in being able to facilitate that move back and helping them, I guess, take that leap of faith in believing in what can be truly a unique opportunity.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, thank you both. We've come to the end of our time today. Really appreciate having you both on. Again, always cool and interesting to learn about young folks like yourself who are taking that plunge. Perhaps something we should have done a while back, but we're doing our piece here with what we have. So in any case, to our audience, again, thank you very much for joining us today. And with that, I bid you all Allah Hafiz. Thank you very much.